What is global divides? It describes the global disparities primarily between developed and developing countries. Our world divides into two, the North and the South. Why is there a global divides? It is because there are many causes for these inequalities, including the availability of natural resources, different levels of health and education, the nature of a country's economy and its industrial sectors. Let's move on to the global north. Global north refers to the developed societies of Europe and North America, which are characterized by established democracy, wealth, technological advancement, political stability, aging population, zero population growth, and dominance of world trade and politics. Global North consists of the richest and the most industrialized countries, which are mainly in the northern part of the world, such as Australia, Canada, the entirety of Europe and Russia, Israel, Japan, New Zealand, Singapore, South Korea, and the United States. North is comprised of all first world countries, which means rich but democratic, second world, rich but communist or socialist. This categorization ignores the geographic position of countries, with some countries in the southern hemisphere, such as Australia and New Zealand, being labeled as part of the North. So, gilabeled sila sa North, belong sila sa South because they are rich, they ignore the geographical position of the country. Global North has 95% enough food and shelter. Global North cover the 1/4 of total population, while South cover 3/4 of total population. The richest man, Jeff Bezos of USA, with a net worth of $149.5 billion. The first richest country in the world is Qatar, and the second country is Luxembourg. The global north is controlling the 80% total income of the world, while the south only controlling the 20% total income of the world. Standard of living: north, about 25% of population in countries have enough basic needs and have access of functioning education system. Classifying countries. Countries can be classified into three different types. First is the most developed countries, second is less developed countries, and the third is the least developed countries. There are three main reasons why our world is so unequal today. First is colonialism, second is the trade, and third is the debt.
One of the global divides is the Global South. Let's look on the definition of Global South. Global South refers to the regions of Latin America, Asia, Africa, and Oceania, mostly low income and often politically or culturally marginalized. It may also be called the developing world, such as Africa, Latin America, and the developing countries in Asia. Developing countries, less developed countries, and less developed regions, including poorer southern regions of wealthy northern countries. In general, Global South refers to these countries' interconnected histories of colonialism, neo-imperialism, and differential economic and social change through which large inequalities in living standards, life expectancy, and access to resources are maintained. So, in Global South, there is interconnected histories of colonialism. When we say colonialism, the idea is these are the countries that experience colonialization in which being colonized by the richer countries. One of the countries that was being colonized is the Philippines. Philippines is one of the countries that was being colonized by Spanish, Japanese, and Americans in World War I and World War II. We can see it in our cultures that came from Spanish, Japanese, and Americans. Another word that is mentioned is neo-imperialism. Now, what is neo-imperialism? It comes from the word imperialism, it means empire building. It is a practice of a nation forcefully imposing full of authority over other nations. And we are talking about neo-imperialism. So what is the full definition of neo-imperialism? It is a domination and sometimes even hegemony over others primarily by way of formally pre-legal agreements, economic power, and cultural influence. In other words, not forcefully followed or controlled from other nations. There are three primary concepts of Global South. First, it refers to economically disadvantaged nation-states and as a post-Cold War alternative to Third World. The Global South, well, contemporary critics of neoliberal globalization use the Global South as a banner or rally countries victimized by the violent economic curse of institutions, like the International Monetary Fund. When we say International Monetary Fund, it is an international organization that promotes global economic growth and financial stability, encourages international trade, and reduces poverty. In other words, the mission of International Monetary Fund is to promote global economic growth and financial stability, encourage international trade, and reduce poverty around the world. The phrase Third World arose during the Cold War to identify countries whose views did not align with NATO or North Atlantic Treaty Organization and capitalism or the Soviet Union and communism. The First World described countries whose views aligned with NATO and capitalism, and the Second World referred to countries that supported communism and the Soviet Union. The second primary concepts of Global South. The Global South captures a deterritorialized geography of capitalism's externalities and means to account for subjugated people within the borders of wealthier countries, such that there are economic souths in the geographic north and north in the geographic south. And the third primary concepts of Global South. It refers to the resistant imaginary of a transnational political subject that results from a shared experience of subjugation under contemporary global capitalism. In other words, Global South means it is a symbolization that represents the country. The Global South is not a directional designation or a point due south from a fixed north. It is a symbolic designation meant to capture the semblance of cohesion that emerged when former colonial entities engaged in political projects of decolonization and moved toward the realization of a post-colonial international order. In Global South, the strongest vehicle for social redistribution and the main mechanism for social transfer is the state. The redistributive function of a state becomes crucial in the context of economic globalization, where the goal of neoliberal economists and institutions is precisely to dismantle local state authority.